Hello everyone and welcome to .NET Core Central. Today I'm going to discuss server streaming in gRPC and doing it in ASP.NET Core. In my last video, I discussed about building a basic gRPC server and client in .NET Core. I'm going to provide the link above if you have not seen the video yet. So this is the application which I built last week. I'm just going to run the server and then the client just to refresh the memory. So this is the gRPC server running and you can see it is listening to get population method and it's a unary operation. And next I'm going to go and run the client application which is doing a get, and the client application is getting 2000 based on the request it made. It made a request to get the population of NY, and on the server this is the gRPC service which uses state population provider, and for NY the response is 20,000, and in the client also we are getting the response of 20,000. So this was the basic application. Now today what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a server stream. So the concept of streaming server in gRPC is that the server, instead of sending a scalar value, it will send a continuous stream of data, and the client will be working on that stream, and the client can decide to stop reading the stream or it can wait up till the stream is completed from the server. So to do that, what we are going to do is we're going to create a proto file, and I'm going to name this proto file as client count. So the idea of this server will be it will send a stream of integer which is an incremental count to the client. So first let's create the client count protobuf file. For that I'm going to create a new proto file. Once the file is created, now I'm going to provide the code here. So just like this file, population will start with the same syntax and the namespace. So here for the namespace, instead of the population, I'm just going to provide client count. The other thing I'm going to do is for this server, the method I'm going to declare, I'm not expecting any input parameter. So to do that in gRPC, we have a concept of empty. And for that, I have to import a protobuf file called empty.proto. So I'm going to do that here. So once I import this, now I would be able to use empty for the input parameter. So now let's declare the service. And just like the previous one, I'm going to define a RPC service and I'm going to name it as get client count. And as I said, instead of a request object, I'm just going to accept empty, which means client is not going to pass me anything. And for the return, I'm going to return the client count, which is an object that I'm going to define below. And I'm going to define the client count here. And for this object, I'll have just one parameter, and which will be an integer. And the position of this parameter will be 1 because I just have one parameter. Now for the server to work as a server stream, in front of the response I have to declare it as a stream. So now this server or this method is going to open up a stream which can be accessed by the client. But we still have to define this. But before doing that, I'm going to go back to the properties of the server, and in the item group here I'm going to add an item for the newly created protobuf file. So I created client count.proto, and as before for the gRPC service, the value is going to be server. So now once all of this is done, I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to name the class as client count provider service. And this class, just like the class I created in the last video, population service, it is deriving from the auto-generated class created by the gRPC.tools. So similarly for client service provider also, I'm going to derive it from client count provider dot client count provider base. So next I'm going to add the namespace. And now next thing I'm going to do is, just like the population service where I have overridden the method, I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to override the get client count method. So I'm just going to override that. So as you can see here in the request, it has empty, which is available in the google.protobuf.wellknown types. And then it uses this I server stream writer, which is in the grpc.core namespace. And this is where we are going to write the stream. And then the last thing is the server call context, which is exactly same as unary service also, like this population service. The server call context is same. For this one, we get this extra stream where we are going to write in. So now let's create a function which will create a continuous stream. For that, we are going to keep a very simple implementation. So what we'll do is, unless we get a cancellation token from the client, we are going to continuously write a count into the server stream writer. So if the cancellation is not requested from the context, then what we are going to do is we are going to just do here we are going to write async, and we're just going to do client count is equal to the count. And then here we're just going to do count plus plus. So this implementation is just for the demonstration of how stream works. But you can see all we have to do practically is just to write into this response stream. So consider this can be a function. Here we can be using external stream or an event source, and we could be getting event from there, and we can continuously write into the server stream, which can be read by the client. So now that we have finished writing this server, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go into startup, and we'll also have to set up this endpoint on the server. So the code will remain pretty much same. Just instead of population service, we are going to have client count provider service. So now our server is ready. So once I run this application, now apart from a unary, I should see a server stream gRPC connection also opened up. So let me run. And now here you can see that the get population, the method type is unary, whereas for the get client down, the method type is server streaming. So the method is registered properly. Now let's go back to the client and change the client implementation. Now if we run the client, it will just get the unary operation because that's what is implemented right now on the client. So it is just working 2000. So this is another important thing to note, that though the server is exposing 2 gRPC services, the client is just consuming only one, and it just works. So now let's just add a file here, and we are going to give the same name. And I'm just going to copy paste the code from here. Because this code is exactly the same. There's no change in the client-side code for the protobuf file, because that is the contract. It is the same across server and client. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to add the protobuf file. Now I'm just going to get rid of this implementation. Now let's create the new client. So we're going to create an instance of client count provider dot client count provider client. If you remember, this is very similar to what we did last time. Let me just get rid of this. I can add it as a namespace in the using statement. Okay. And then here I'm going to pass the channel. And once client is created, next thing I have to do is I have to call the get client count method, and then I will be looping through the stream and writing it into the console. So for that I'll use and for the second parameter, I can pass the cancellation token. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cancellation token source here. And let's say I will time out after 5 seconds. And now I'll provide the cancellation token here. So from the client, I'm calling the get client count, empty as the request, and I'm passing the cancellation token, which has a time to leave of 5 seconds. So once I get the response, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a try catch block, and I'm going to catch the RPC exception. The reason for this is we are going to get an exception when we send a cancellation token, right? We will get a server will throw an exception. So we want to catch this exception and just write in console. In a real life program, if we are canceling from client side, we still want to catch the exception and log it. Now inside of try block, what we are going to do is we will be now reading the response. So for that, we'll start with for each. So you can see in the response we have a response stream, and from response stream we can do a read all, and on the read all also we can pass the token. So I'm going to pass it. Now this one is an async, so we have to put an await here. And once we put an await, the next thing we obviously have to do is the main now have to be async. So once we do that, we got the item, and then what we can do is, let me get it to the next line. And then we can do console dot write line, and here we can do item, which is the response, and which is nothing but the client count object dot count. So we'll print it out. Now let's run this program. And if we run it, we can see that all the counts are incremented count are coming up, and it ran for 5 seconds. And after 5 seconds, it threw an exception, and the exception is pretty straightforward. It's saying canceled and detail call canceled by the client. It's because we are canceling from client side. So it totally makes sense. Just to make sure that this is the exception message, I'm just going to add a line here. Let's run again. And we can see we're again getting a stream of data from the server. And then finally we got the RPC error, and it is essentially saying the same thing. So you can see here it is really easy and trivial to create a server stream in gRPC. It's just defining a class, telling that it is a string in the definition, and then just like any other thing, creating a service, and then here continuously writing into the response stream. That's all we have to do. Response stream is already open for us. So as long as we want, we can continue writing into the stream. And on the server side also, it is just creating the same contract and then just getting a handle of the response. As soon as we call it, we are going to get asynchronous server stream back. And from that, we just have to read. And as and when we get a response, we can just deal with that, whatever we want to do. So that's all I want to cover today. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope this was helpful. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you have been getting value from my channel, please subscribe to it. Thank you.